They found the envelope tucked inside a faded yearbook on the welcome table, just one word written on it, to the class of 65. No return address, no signature, but someone had taped a note below. To be read aloud during the reunion, please. At first, no one paid attention. The ballroom at the Marriott was full of silver hair and laughter. Shaky hands clinked wine glasses. People kept squinting at name tags, pretending they remembered more than they did. Linda Harrison stood near the stage, still radiant, still surrounded. The queen bee never lost her sting or her followers. And then someone picked up the envelope. The MC, a retired dentist who once ran track, tapped the mic and cleared his throat. "Looks like we have a little surprise from an old classmate," he chuckled. The room quieted fast. He unfolded the letter. He only read 3 words before his voice caught. "My name's Martha Green." Silence, the laughter evaporated. People shifted in their seats. A few looked around. Martha? Martha who? Wasn't she that shy one? The girl with the bad shoes? Didn't she leave sophomore year? Or maybe she graduated early? But the letter kept going. Calm, direct, no spite in the tone, just wait. "I don't expect you to remember me, but I remember you. I remember the jokes, the whispers, the time someone taped a sanitary pad to my locker with the words rodent girl written in Sharpie. I remember when I stopped speaking for 3 weeks. Not because I wanted to, but because my jaw locked from anxiety. My doctor called it stress-induced mutism. I was 16. A gasp from somewhere near the bar. Linda's smile faltered. "I've lived a good life, married a kind man. Raised 2 children. I loved books, gardening, silence, but part of me never uncurled. There's a kind of pain that doesn't leave bruises, but it never leaves. And since I couldn't say these things in person, I'm saying them now." Some people stood, a few sat down. One woman was crying. "I brought receipts," the letter went on. "Page 3 is my psych report from 1966. Page 4 is a journal entry. Page 5 is yours, Linda." Linda froze. "I never meant to ruin you, but you should know what you did. You were 13 when you told the basketball team I had a disease. You were 14 when you told your friends my dad was a drunk, though you, Dee, never met him. And you were 16 when I disappeared from the senior photo, because you told everyone to turn their backs when I walked in." The MC stopped reading. Linda's hand went to her mouth. "I've forgiven you," the letter ended, "but I never forgot. And I don't want you to forget either." Then came the twist no one saw coming. A staff member rolled out an old TV and hit play. It was grainy footage, a VHS transfer. A young girl in black and white, her voice shaking, whispered into the camera, "If I disappear from your memories, fine, but at least let the truth stay behind." Someone applauded, then someone else. Linda stood motionless, mascara streaking her cheek. And without a word, she turned, grabbed her purse, and walked out of the reunion. No one followed her, not this time. Something small cracks open. At first, people thought it would blow over. Just a dramatic letter at a reunion. A few tears, some awkward silences. Then back to business as usual, old classmates sharing Facebook friend requests and photos of grandkids. But something didn't sit right, not with everyone. Especially not with Denise Patterson, the reunion committee treasurer and former debate club nerd, now retired, meticulous as ever. She was the one who stayed behind after the ballroom emptied out. She was the one who found the second envelope, slipped under the catering table. Smaller than the first. No decoration, just a return address, M. Green, postmarked 3 months ago. She should have tossed it, but something about it felt deliberate, like it wasn't lost, just waiting. Inside was a single key and a note. Room 312, top drawer. I never wanted anyone to find this, but maybe someone should. Room 312. Denise recognized the number immediately. It was a staff filing room in the old East Wing of Jefferson High, the one slated for demolition next year. The room hadn't been touched in decades. Rumor was it held leftover academic records, broken overhead projectors, and out-of-date emergency plans. She hesitated. She had dinner plans, a new season of The Crown to start. But something about the way Linda had run out that night, shaking, sobbing, mascara smudged, and how no one followed her, made her stomach twist. Martha's words had landed like a stone dropped in a lake, and the ripples were just starting to reach shore. So the next morning, Denise drove to the school. The East Wing smelled like mildew and regret, paint piling, fluorescent lights flickering. She found room 312 behind a broken vending machine. The key worked on the first try. The drawer groaned open. Inside were two boxes, one marked MG Personal. The other, Incident Reports 1962-1966, Do Not Remove. She didn't know which scared her more. She opened the second one first. What she found changed everything. Memory comes back sharper than expected. The first folder Denise pulled out was thin, faded green, labeled in neat, old-fashioned cursive. Green, Martha A., internal notes, confidential. Oh, she hesitated. There was something about opening another woman's past with latex gloves on that felt wrong. But curiosity had already melted into obligation. The first page, a behavioral referral form dated October 14, 1963. Subject Martha Green. Filed by Vice Principal D. Harrison. Reason, withdrawn behavior. Repeated failure to maintain eye contact. Possible signs of low moral fiber or underlying emotional disturbance. Low moral fiber. Denise blinked. Who the hell writes that about a teenage girl? Second page, a disciplinary notice for inappropriate attire, no specific clothing listed. Third page, refused to participate in class group work. Shows signs of willful non-cooperation. It kept going, more referrals, more observations, no actual incidents. No records of her doing anything, just being odd, quiet, alone, a problem because she didn't fit. And then came the annotation in red ink at the bottom of one form. I recommend this student be removed from mainstream classes before she infects others with her victim complex. Infects. It hit Denise like cold water down the spine, because she remembered, not everything, but enough. She and Martha had shared homeroom for 3 years. She remembered the rumors, the cruel nickname. The way Martha walked hunched, like she was trying to fold herself out of sight. But she also remembered something else now, something sharper than guilt. The day Martha vanished from school, no announcement, no goodbye, just gone. And nobody asked, except for one person. A substitute teacher, Ms. Langford, who whispered once in class, "Does anyone know where she went?" Linda had laughed and said, "Back to the sewer, probably." And no one stopped her, not Denise. Not the teacher, not anyone. The memory came back too clear, too unforgiving. She looked back at the box. There was one last folder inside, thinner than the others. It was labeled Harrison, Authorization Notes / Counseling Referrals. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside, a typed memo. Per verbal approval from Vice Principal D. Harrison, student Martha Green has been scheduled for mandatory counseling outside campus, effective November 1963. This is in lieu of suspension, due to the sensitive nature of her behavioral issues. She will no longer appear in regular student rosters. Parent communication not required, file closed. And closed. Like she was an unresolved complaint they didn't want to escalate. Denise dropped the file. Suddenly, this wasn't just about bullying anymore. This was a deliberate erasure, a pattern. A system that let a girl be written out because her pain made the grown-ups uncomfortable. And somehow, no one had ever questioned it. But now the file was open. And Denise, half shaking, half furious, realized what Martha had really done by leaving that key. She hadn't asked for justice. She debuilt a fuse and trusted someone would light it. A quiet proof no one knew existed. The second box was smaller. No official labels, no stamps, just her initials written in faded ballpoint ink, MG. And beneath it, one line in Martha's handwriting. Things they didn't think I'd keep. Denise opened it gently. Inside were layers, papers wrapped in tissue, tiny envelopes, clippings, and something that looked like a child's notebook tied shut with red yarn. The air smelled like dust and camphor. But under that, something sharper, like old fear that had finally been unboxed. The first thing she pulled out, a photo of a classroom bulletin board, dated 1964. Someone had cut out Martha's face from the group photo pinned at the center. A crude drawing of a rat was taped over it. On the back, written in pencil, no one took it down for 6 weeks. Underneath that, a library checkout slip. All the books were about depression, PTSD, trauma. The dates showed Martha was checking them out monthly. Back in the 60s, Denise frowned. This was decades before those diagnoses were even part of mainstream conversation. Then came the envelope marked, "Don't read unless you have to." She read it anyway. It was a letter from Martha to herself. "If you're reading this, it means I survived another year. I've stopped counting how many people looked at me and saw a problem instead of a person. I want to scream in the middle of the hallway just to see if anyone hears it. But I won't. I'll write instead. If silence is a prison, maybe paper is a shovel." Denise had to sit down because what she was seeing now wasn't just a collection of old pain. It was an archive of harm, cataloged, named, time-stamped. There were pages upon pages of handwritten observations, dates, names, places, everything Linda had ever said in class, everything certain teachers ignored, times, quotes, even direct transcripts of conversations. And then one item wrapped in plastic, a cassette tape, on it a label, Jan 12th, behind the library. Denise took a shaky breath. She didn't even know if she had a cassette player anymore, but something about the date made her pause. She turned to the journal with the red yarn and untied it. Inside was the entry. "They pushed me today, not hard, just enough. Behind the library, no one saw, or they pretended not to, but the recorder was in my coat. Maybe one day it'll matter." It wasn't just evidence now, it was premeditated memory. And suddenly, Denise realized Martha had been planning this. Not the revenge, but the record, the legacy. She hadn't just endured. She'd been watching, noting, archiving, even when no one saw her. And now Denise was holding it all. One final envelope lay at the bottom of the box. It was addressed to whoever didn't look away. She didn't open it yet. She was shaking too much, because for the first time since that reunion, Denise didn't feel pity for Martha. She felt awe. A voice that shouldn't have been heard. Denise hadn't touched a cassette deck in 20 years. She found one at a thrift store across town, dusty, $5, with a sticker that said SIS. She prayed it would work. When she slid the tape in and pressed play, it clicked with a mechanical sigh. Then nothing, static, muffled wind, and then footsteps crunching gravel, shuffling, a girl's voice breathing hard, a zipper being tugged. She was setting the recorder, hiding it. Then silence again, until another voice cut in. Sharp, bright, mean in that particular way only teenage girls know how to be. "Look who's lurking again, you rat, you little sewer freak." Denise's blood went cold, that voice. It wasn't just anyone, it was Linda. Even as a teenager, her voice had a smile in it when she said cruel things, like she wanted people to think she was joking, but you could hear the venom beneath it. Did your daddy finally drink himself dead yet? Or is he still sniffing around dumpsters for work? More laughter, not just Linda, at least two others. Maybe three, all girls, names unknown. Then the sound of someone being pushed. Gravel scraping, a stifled cry, and then Martha's voice, shaky but clear, right into the recorder as if whispering to herself. I'm not going to break, I'm not going to break. Denise covered her mouth. The recording lasted 6 minutes. 6 minutes that shattered 60 years of denial. No more, we were just kids. No more, it wasn't that bad. No more, nobody remembers what really happened. Because now everyone could hear it. Denise uploaded the file to her laptop, saved 3 backup copies, and sent one straight to Avery. It took Avery 3 hours to open it. When she finally did, she texted one line back. I'm shaking, but she's not voiceless anymore. The next day, Avery posted a new video. She didn't talk this time. She just let the audio play. At minute 2, the comment section exploded. I had the same words thrown at me. She sounded like me at 15. I can't believe this is real. I believe her, I believe her. The clip went viral in under 24 hours. Then came the first email from a news outlet. Then the second. Then a podcast offer. Then a producer from a national morning show. But Avery didn't answer any of them. She was already at a printer shop, pressing a transcript of the recording onto thick white paper, page by page, line by line, and mailing it directly to the one place no one had dared to send anything before, Linda Harrison's company headquarters, to her personal office. Certified mail. She didn't include a letter, just a sticky note. Your voice came back. Thought you want a copy. The first time they say sorry, but too late. The apology emails started trickling in 2 days after the audio went public. Some were short, some sounded like scripts. I'm sorry for what Martha went through. No one deserves to be treated that way. If I could go back in time, I'd stand up for her. Most ended with a line about how things were different back then, as if time erased cruelty, as if silence aged well. Avery didn't reply to most of them. She just saved them in a folder called Too Late. But one message made her stop scrolling. It was from Joanne Kessler, one of the women whose laugh could be heard clearly on the tape. No denial. No excuses, just, I remember that day, I remember everything. I didn't just laugh, I spit at her shoes. She never even looked up. I have 3 daughters now, and I've taught them to be kind because I never was. I wish I believed in heaven. I'd want her to be there, somewhere I can't follow. Avery didn't know if it was real remorse or just clean guilt, but it stung because it felt honest. And then came the press release. Linda Harrison's PR team posted a statement across all her platforms. Ms. Harrison is deeply shocked and saddened by recent resurfaced content involving past events from her adolescence. She does not recall the alleged incident and wishes to extend compassion to anyone who was hurt by misunderstandings or mischaracterizations of her youthful behavior. Misunderstandings, mischaracterizations. Martha had bruises, tape. Time stamps, there was no room left for misunderstanding. Avery didn't post a response. She didn't have to. The internet handled it for her. Under the post, say her name, say Martha's name. You don't recall calling her a sewer rat. Lucky for you, there's audio. Compassion without ownership is just performance. The comments filled up fast, but none of them could compare to what arrived that night. A direct message. No blue check mark, no bio. Just a blank profile and one line. She wasn't the only one you erased. Avery stared at the screen. The message didn't say who sent it, didn't say when. but it came with a scanned image of a yearbook page. Two students circled in red. One was Martha. The other, a girl named Serena Lynn. No signature, no caption, no explanation, just one more name, one more girl, one more silence waiting to be opened. The public starts listening and judging. It wasn't just a viral moment anymore. It was a movement. Teachers started playing the audio clip in classrooms. Therapists posted breakdowns of Martha's body language. Op-eds debated whether high school bullying should carry legal consequences decades later. But the loudest noise came from people who weren't ready to hear it. This is cancel culture gone senile. They're punishing a grandmother for teenage drama. That girl was probably fragile to begin with. Then came the counterpunch. Someone unearthed the school's archived board minutes from 1964. Buried in the middle was a single line: special transfer approved for student MG due to extended psychiatric disruption. No further inquiry recommended. Psychiatric disruption. It wasn't just cruelty, they institutionalized the outcome. And they knew, worse, Linda's mother, Vice Principal Dolores Harrison, signed the approval. Same last name, same signature, still legally intact. The public turned fast. Within 48 hours, 3 of Linda's corporate partners severed ties. The city mayor withdrew her from an education reform panel. Her own alma mater released a bland statement distancing themselves. But it wasn't enough. Because Avery didn't stop. She posted a timeline: every documented slight, every sealed memo, every sanitized report, each one layered with commentary from former students who were ready to speak now. Dozens, one by one. Stories that sounded familiar. Too familiar, because it wasn't just about Martha anymore. It was about girls named Candace and Shauna and Serena Lynn, the one in the red circle from that anonymous message. Serena's name had been removed from the 1965 graduation list. No explanation, no transfer record, no obituary, just gone. Avery asked a question in her next video: where is Serena Lynn? It racked up 5 million views in 3 days. One user commented, "She sat behind me, always wore blue. Then one day gone, no one said a word." Another wrote, "My mom knew her, said she got sent away for something stupid." That it ruined her family. The judgment had started, but it wasn't just pointed at the past anymore. It was digging, turning over stones no one wanted lifted. The public wasn't just listening now. They were asking questions. Loud ones, legal ones, dangerous ones. And somewhere out there, someone who had stayed quiet for 60 years, maybe Serena herself, was watching it all unfold. Legacy begins to rot in broad daylight. It started with a resignation. The current principal of Jefferson High stepped down, effective immediately, after it was revealed that the school had quietly received a copy of Martha's original complaint back in 1971 and shelved it. The scanned memo, now public, had one damning sentence: per administration discretion, no follow-up required. The student has been removed from visibility. Removed from visibility, as if she were clutter. Something to file, not someone to protect. Then came the school board president. She'd been a student council rep in 1965, and yes, her name showed up in Martha's journal. 3 cruel remarks, including one about Martha, always smelling like glue and basement. She issued an apology, but it didn't help. The community was done forgiving people who suddenly remembered. And just when the spotlight was hottest, something shifted. Avery's university email got locked for unusual activity. Her internship interviews got canceled without explanation. One company HR rep told her off record, "We were advised not to bring on anyone involved in sensitive online controversies." She hadn't broken any rules, but she was too loud now, too visible. And institutions, just like people, prefer their rot to stay underground. Then someone left a note on her apartment door. No name, just 4 typed words. You're not helping anyone. She didn't post about it. She didn't want to give whoever wrote it the satisfaction, but she did buy a second deadbolt, and she kept going. Because for every threat, there were 10 more women emailing her with stories. Each one started the same way. I never told anyone this, but... Then, the biggest blow landed. A journalist digging into Serena Lynn's disappearance published an exposé. Her records had been sealed at the request of Vice Principal Dolores Harrison, citing emotional instability and ethnic assimilation challenges. Ethnic assimilation. They'd called her a disruption because she didn't speak English well enough, because her lunch smelled weird, because she was too quiet, and like Martha, she was sent away. Not to another school, but to a state-run youth facility. She'd been 15, no record of her ever graduating, no family found. It wasn't just erasure anymore, it was systemic disposal. That night, Avery stood in front of her camera, eyes red but steady. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She just said, "You tried to write them out of history. I'm writing them back in." The comments exploded. But this time, not just with empathy. There were legal questions, policy demands, petitions. Local officials couldn't ignore it anymore. A formal investigation into Jefferson High's 1960s administrative history was launched. Not symbolic, criminal. But behind all the noise, one thing was clear. The system was cracking, and it would not collapse quietly. Because the people who built it were still alive, still wealthy, still whispering behind closed doors. And they had just realized something terrifying. Martha Green didn't stay dead. She came back as a file, a voice, and a granddaughter who wouldn't shut up. What she couldn't die with. Avery thought the video was everything. But the real reckoning came in a manila folder labeled private, only open if you need to know. She found it weeks later, tucked behind old tax papers in her grandmother's filing cabinet. She hadn't planned to dig through the drawer. She was just looking for her grandmother's will again. But something about the way the folder was hidden, like it didn't want to be touched, made her stop breathing for a second. Inside. 1 photo, 2 letters, and a single ultrasound. The photo was dated 1971. A hospital bed, a bruised wrist, a 20-something Martha staring blankly at the ceiling. The first letter was addressed to someone named Robert. It started simple. "I loved you. I wanted to be whole for you, but I never was." And then came the bleed. She wrote about a night during her first year of college, a party she didn't want to go to, a group of high school classmates who recognized her and invited her in. Said they were just joking, that they'd all grown up, that she should loosen up now. She drank 1 cup, just one. And then she woke up on the floor of a dorm room with her dress inside out and no memory. No police report. No justice, just another silence. She tried to tell Robert, the man she would eventually marry, but he froze, told her it was better not to dwell on the past, told her they should just focus on healing. He meant well, maybe. But that was the first brick in the wall between them, and then came the second letter. This one was for Avery. "My darling girl, if you are reading this, it means I left too many things unsaid." She explained how she thought the pain would fade over time. But it didn't. It just got quieter, more private, like a room with no windows. She buried it under good deeds, under cooking, under motherhood. But it sat there, inside her body, like a second heartbeat. She kept the ultrasound because, yes, she got pregnant. And she kept it, even after the miscarriage, because part of her needed proof that it happened. That she hadn't imagined the violence, that her life had cracked and no one else saw the break. "I never got to bury that baby," she wrote. but I carried her, even after she left me. Avery read the letters 3 times, and then she didn't speak for hours. It wasn't just about high school bullying anymore. It wasn't even about justice. It was about how much a woman can hold without breaking, how long a person can live under someone else's cruelty, and still bake cookies, still volunteer at church, still send birthday cards on time, still survive. And suddenly, all the quiet parts of Martha's life made sense. The way she always double-checked the locks, the way she never liked elevators, the way she'd freeze when Avery joked about college parties. It wasn't quirks, it was trauma she refused to pass down. And in that refusal, there was a kind of strength. Avery looked at the ultrasound one more time, and that night she made a choice. She posted again, but not on YouTube. This time she contacted a journalist, not to go viral, but to go loud, because her grandmother had been silent her whole life. Avery wouldn't let her be silent in death, too. What she left behind. The journalist didn't expect the footage to go anywhere. He thought it was another sad story, too quiet, too ordinary, too long ago. He almost passed on it, but something in Avery's voice caught him off guard. She didn't sound angry. She didn't even sound sad. She sounded exact. This isn't just a story about my grandmother. It's about what happens when a girl gets marked too early and no one ever helps her clean it off. He watched the video again, and then he published it. The article dropped on a Tuesday. Headline: The girl they called Rat, one woman's hidden war with her hometown. Within hours, it exploded. Teachers from the old school emailed in, former classmates, even people who had nothing to do with it, mothers, daughters, strangers, sent messages like they'd been waiting their whole lives to say something. Like someone had finally opened a door they'd been staring at from the inside. One comment read, "I thought I was the only one who still flinched when a group of women laughed behind me." Another, "She just described my childhood. I didn't even know I was still carrying it." And then came the letter from the school board. They had launched an internal investigation, not just into what happened to Martha, but into patterns. They discovered that in the years surrounding Martha's time there, 3 other female students had dropped out mid-year without ever requesting transcripts. All 3 had records flagged as emotionally unstable. All 3 had been sent to special counseling without parental consent. Avery asked the board one question: were they all unstable, or were they just inconvenient? The board fell silent until a retired guidance counselor, anonymous at first, sent a typed statement to the journalist. "We were told not to dig. The vice principal handled it privately. Some girls were targeted, we all knew. It was a system. It wasn't just kids being cruel. It was adults letting it happen, sometimes encouraging it to keep order." And the name that showed up the most? Linda Harrison's mother, Vice Principal Dolores Harrison. Legacy rot again. But something strange happened after that. Avery started getting letters, actual physical letters, sent to her P.O. box. One was from a man named Terry, now 74, who had been in Martha's chemistry class. He wrote, "She sat alone by the window. One day I tried to say hi, but Linda made a joke about pest control, and I backed off. I've hated myself for 50 years. Please tell her I'm sorry." Another was from the school nurse's daughter. "My mom kept a file on Martha. She didn't want to throw it away. She said, 'One day someone will care. I'm sending it to you now.' Inside the file, a photo of Martha with a bruised eye. Written on the back, said she fell down. Doesn't match the injury." Avery didn't cry. She didn't have time, because her inbox was now full of interview requests from podcasts, radio shows, to morning TV programs. Everyone wanted the story. But Avery only said yes to one. a local town hall because she knew what her grandmother would have chosen. Local, quiet, with the lights on. That night, she stood in front of over 100 people in a school auditorium. She held her grandmother's yearbook, her binder, her ultrasound, and she said the one thing Martha never could: "You didn't kill her, but you didn't save her either, and it's time we admit both." Some people cried, some walked out. Some stayed after, just to sit near her in silence. The next week, the school announced the creation of the Martha Green Initiative, a mental health scholarship and mandatory curriculum on emotional abuse and peer targeting. The principal called it a reckoning overdue. But Avery didn't stop there. She had one more thing to do. The video that started it all remains online, still getting comments, still being shared in college dorms, therapist offices, group chats, and every so often someone writes, "I didn't know her, but I felt her." Because Martha Green didn't disappear, she multiplied.